Just Eff It. Hi, I'm Romy, an identity coach helping others who struggle with their sexual identity and families of queer youth find their path of understanding and acceptance.
And I'm Carla, a mom empowerment coach empowering moms to own their new identities and motherhood journeys.
And together we are the EFFing Madres. We are here to invite you guys into stories of some inspiring madres
who have changed their lives through an Eff It moment. So here we go. Just Eff It.
Happy Monday, everybody. We are the EFFing Madres. I'm Romy. This is Carla. And yeah, we are two Latinas, two girl moms, two best friends. We've got this podcast, this space. And yes, every Monday we jump in and chat with a mom who's having an EFFing moment.
So we have Molly Winter, and she is the author of More, which is the memoir of open marriage. So it's going to be an interesting conversation. I'm sure for some people, they hear that and they're like, oh my God. But this is all about having conversations that we don't normally have and hearing perspectives from other people's relationships and other people's lives that we might not, maybe we have a judgment about it at first, but like it's all about listening and hearing people out. And, we can all learn things from people no matter what their experience. And so I'm really curious to dive into this open marriage and the book that led her to, or what led her to writing this book about it.
Yeah, and I've been listening to it. It's really opened up so much for me, so many growth opportunities by listening to this. And so when I reached out to her on social media and asked if she would join us, and she said yes with like no hesitation, I was jumping up and down, like so excited. I was like, Carl, like we got to get her on the book like immediately. So yeah, I cannot wait to chat with her. A little bit
Awesome.
Starstruck.
All right, cool. We're going to bring her in just a second. Right into the question. So the first one is, what shifted your mindset to say Eff It that you're going to share with us today?
Yeah, I mean, the big Eff It moment, I think is really more about writing the book than all the things that happened in the book. And it actually came to me in a meditation. So it almost feels like I had to get outside of my regular mindset in order to get some sort of higher power permission. It sounds woo-woo, but like literally I was in a meditation when I just got this feeling like I have to write a book about my open marriage. And it felt like, how can I possibly do that? But I kept waiting for the feeling to go away and it just wouldn't. So yeah, it was kind of like, well, Eff it. I guess I'm writing this book and I'm going to have to just, conquer the obstacles, both inner and external, as they arise.
I just want to say, when we are in those meditations, and thank you for saying that, like when it keeps hitting you, I know Carla and I have been there and something doesn't go away. You're like, okay, I have a choice to effing listen and move with whatever's pushing me or push it away, but it's going to find its way wanting to show up and you followed it. I want to thank you for those of you listening, Molly's book, More, right? A memoir about an open relationship. I started reading towards the end of my relationship that I just came out of because we were trying to open it up. And I found your book and lots to say about trying to do an open relationship, but so helpful to both of us listening to it at the same time. So there's a reason you were pushed to write this for people that need someone to let them in on what this can look like. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. And I will say too, it's like whether you're in an open relationship or not, I think the Eff It moment there is also just like being willing to explore your own self and your own need for freedom, however that's going to look as a mother. We're so willing to shut down our own freedom. We're told that's what we're supposed to do. And it doesn't always have to turn into like sexual freedom or an open relationship, but like that moment of being like, I can't continue in this, small constrained way. I have to live loud. I have to live my truest self. That's the other big Eff It moment, I think.
Yeah, I was just going to ask because I will be reading that book. I have not, but I'm curious to know for people that haven't read the book, like how did this come on? Like when did it come on?
Yeah, so I chose I kind of play around with time in the writing of the memoir. It covers 10 years and it's sometimes hard to like piece together in a linear narrative how it all went down. But it kind of tells the story from starting when my kids were 3 and 6. And anybody who's at that stage of being a mother knows, yeah,
Carla.
3.
you are really, willing to say F it just about every other moment. But at the same time, you can't. I sometimes call it like, it's like being under house arrest too. Cause it's
Yes.
like you're with your kids all the time. And then even when you get them to bed, you are, and you like can't go anywhere. And it's like, that's something they don't talk about. It's like, you can't go anywhere. And so I had this moment when my husband came home late from work and my kids were 3 and 6, and I was just like, I got to get out of here. And I just went to get some air. And I ended up getting pulled into a bar by a friend I used to work with. I was taking some time off from teaching. I was a teacher and was staying home with my kids for a little while. And I got pulled into this bar and pulled into this basically like single world of single people who were like living their life. And it was so, I knew about this world. I had ventured into it before. But at this stage, I was 35. My kids were 3 and 6. And I was like, oh, this world is still here. I hadn't like seen it for so long. When a guy started flirting with me, and it kind of went from there. That was like, even just being like, F it, I'm leaving the house.
Yeah.
F it, I'm going to this bar. F it, I'm going to flirt with this guy. F it, I'm giving him my number. Like, it kind of just like went
Yeah.
one thing at a time until there I was in a place that I had never thought I was going to be.
When we
Wow.
effing give ourselves permission, I think at that as mothers, when we just really go, you know what, fuck it. Like I have the permission to do this. I can be a mother and I can do this. Like two things can coexist. That world is still exists and the world of being a mother still exists. And we don't for all walks of life, we don't all have to lose one or the other, right?
Right.
Like you can find a friend for both. So I definitely am in that journey as well. When you said F it and you decided to put this book of your open relationship out there, I want to just, again, you're a mother, right? You have the same
Yeah.
fears and thoughts and concerns of what your kids will see and read one day as any of us. What did it do for you? What kind of opportunities has it done for you by putting it out there?
Yeah, well, the first thing that happened was like the first reason I told myself I couldn't write it, I'll start with that, was because my youngest still didn't even know we were in an open marriage. So he was 14. He's now my kids are 19 and 22. But when I got this idea, or this kind of thunderbolt of inspiration of like, I've got to write this, I was like, oh, maybe not now, because my 14-year-old still doesn't know. But then a month later, he saw my husband's like OkCupid account in a very
Yeah.
similar way to my oldest had found out previously. So like it happened the same way for my next kid later. And then it was like, that was one of the opportunities. I was like, okay, I'm ready now. I can own this thing about myself. And the book then came out when he was actually in college. I mean, it takes a while to actually write it and
Yes.
get it out into the world. But like the opportunities that came with saying F it were, for one, I had to tell everybody. Like my parents also have an open marriage, but I didn't know until I was 28. That's something else that I talk about in the book. My
Mm-hmm.
sister didn't know at all. And so when I told my parents, I was like, I think I need to write this book. They were very nervous. And one of the things they had to do was tell my sister. So it was like, there are all these things, all these secrets I love your face, Carla. That I love that you said it, because you're like, what?
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm like
yeah,
trying to
yeah.
imagine like
And
doing
Roby's
that. I'm
like,
like, oh my gosh.
I remember that
I know.
part.
I'm like, I know all this in the book. Like, yeah, I know all of this.
I know, but it's also like, but these were all opportunities, right? So this is what's so interesting. And I started the book in a moment where my oldest had found out about the open marriage. It's kind of like that was my greatest fear, my kids knowing, because
Mhm.
it seemed so transgressive and deviant, and what will they think of me and all of
Yeah.
that. But once they knew, and now my oldest has read the book, my youngest has not. I'm actually like, I'm in the bedroom of my youngest because he's at work right now. Like I needed a door that closed, and
Yeah.
he'll be like, why are my clothes picked up? Because I picked it up. You know what I mean? But like we have so much more honesty in our relationship
Mm,
now because I, came out as polyamorous. It still creates some issues from time to time. But we have this opening in our relationship now where we can talk to each other. And I feel
Mm,
like the first time, it was pretty recent that I introduced my oldest to one of my partners. I wanted to invite him to my birthday party, and my oldest was going to be there. So I was like, "How would you feel about meeting my partner?" And he was like, "That's cool." He's like, "Can I bring my girlfriend?" And I hadn't met her, and I was like, "Yes, please. I want to meet your you know what I mean? So it was like he was 22, actually he was still 21 when I had my birthday, but it was like those moments where we are now forging an adult relationship. I'm so glad that we have, this kind of foundation now where they know I'm not going to clutch my pearls, where I'm not like in their face with it. My husband and I are still very happily married, and the four of us are the family unit. But they know that there are other people in our lives, and it's not something that I have to like hide, even though I do keep boundaries and privacy in place. And it's just, and it's opened up my relationship with my parents too, and my sister.
mm,
It's like,
mm.
I don't have secrets anymore. And it's really liberating.
I love that you're speaking on that as an opportunity, because it is an opportunity to have like honest, real conversations with the people around you and not to be living some like private, hush hush, secretive life. And right after reading it, my partner and I started a YouTube channel, and I'm having these conversations with some friends of mine. And we talked about open relationship because I was so intrigued with it, right? I wanted to talk to everybody who had
Yeah.
had one. All of a sudden, I was like, oh my gosh. And then to find out so many people that I didn't know have had one, but because nobody talks about them, you don't know. It's like this really quiet secret society, right? So once you bring light to it, it allows for these types of conversations and for people to explore. And the amount of messages I got back after my conversation that I put out there with it was massive, with the messages of people connecting to this and appreciating this, like, and that's how I felt with you. And when I ended up, my partner and I ended up breaking up and having a conversation with my daughter, it was a really honest conversation. She's
Yeah.
only 8, but we had a really beautiful honest conversation about the transition of our relationship. And I think you're right, starting to create those with our kids as they get older, about just who we are as like women
Yeah.
and where we're at in our love lives, like, is a real gift to the quiet hush hush shit that we all grew up with our parents, not knowing any of the secrets and you know what I mean? And then it comes out when you're older and you're like, "What?"
Right. And you don't even have the opportunity to talk
Right.
about this or the language to talk about it. So I think it's so
Totally.
important for daughters to know that their
Yes.
mothers are whole people. And I think it's
Yes.
very important for sons to know that their mothers are
Yes.
whole people. And that I don't exist to clean up their socks. And I don't,
Yes.
it's like,
Carla,
I think my
yes.
Yes.
sons are really good partners, because of it, that
Yeah.
they have a lot of, respect for what a woman is, that it's not a monolith. They're not under some delusion that like, oh, well, women don't really like sex or, some bullshit like that. It's
Yeah.
like,
Women don't have lives outside
Right.
of being
right,
moms.
desires, bodies.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
it sounds so for people that are listening and myself, curiosity. So your husband was totally on board, and he's still the same husband that you had when you brought this subject up to him, and so he was like, okay,
Yeah.
sounds like
Yeah,
okay.
we're gonna celebrate our 25th anniversary in August. So
Wow.
we're veterans here. We know, and it was not easy. That's partly why I had to write a book about it. It was not easy.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, was that what sort of conversation was that like? Like, was he confused? Was he like resistant at first, or
I know, Romi's shaking her head too.
Yeah.
My husband was much more into it than I was, to be honest.
oh,
So we had some exploration before we got married and had kids, especially before we had kids. Like we went to a sex club a couple times. We had a couple threesomes, but once I became a mother, and that's why I think this, F at
Space.
Madres
Yeah.
thing is so key. It's like once I became a mother, I was like, no more of that. I'm a mom now. Like I can't do any of that. He, to his credit, said, "There's no way you're going to be okay with only having sex with me for the rest of your life." Because I met him when I was 23. I was not a virgin, but I had had very few partners. And he was like, he knew enough to be like, this is, and he was kind of into it, right? But I was like, no, 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 I'm never going to want to do that. And then that night at age 35, when I was like, oh, wait, yeah, maybe I do actually want to do that. I was more surprised than he was that I was interested in it.
Mm,
What I wasn't fully prepared for, though, was like the reciprocity of this. I didn't
Mhm.
feel like I could, and he sure didn't want it to be a one sided thing where it was like, well, I'm going to go out and do my thing, and you can just be, monogamous with me forever. And there are some partners that do that, where one person has like a much higher sex drive, and the other person, one person gets permission, and the other person's like, great, now I don't have to have as much sex with you. So this is perfect. Um, but it happens that way. Sometimes people just have mismatched sex drives, but both of us were interested in it, and that was a lot of what I had to reckon with, is my jealousy about him being with other people, and
mhm,
my also just kind of like figuring out what about this is what I want. Because it's one thing to just be like, I want to have wild sexy adventures, and then the other thing to, now I really consider myself polyamorous, where I have two other long-term partnerships with like people I love and who love me, and my husband has multiple people that he loves and who love him. But we are each other's, anchor partner, and we are the ones who have a family together, and are each other's priority. Um,
I
but yeah,
think you
it was a
guys
long
being
road.
Molly, you guys being a priority in your core and you guys having that love and that union together is such a big part of it from the little bit that I've explored and gotten to know. And I've really not done it well over the last few years. But
Nice.
I was one of those people that was searching for something that I really wasn't being honest with myself about where I was at. So I wasn't the right person to create an open relationship that would work healthy as my unit, right? I was somebody using it as a way to not escape what I probably shouldn't have been in,
Hmm.
and seeking. And so I had to catch myself in it, like you were saying, and really understand, like, why am I doing this? And is it because I'm exploring these different parts of me, but this is my base and my core, or am I avoiding something in me and running off to just have sex, right? And I
Yeah.
think there's a lot to be thought about when people get into these, and checking yourself and knowing where it's coming from, right? And that's when I was like, oh, I don't necessarily know that I'm in the space, right? And who knows what my journey will be that you are on, but definitely from what I've seen and the takeaway and watching a successful family like you is it can work if you both are communicating and know what the reason for all of this is, right? And I think the word poly scared the shit out of me.
Oh, me too. Our big,
I was
our
like,
No way. Our big rule was no falling in love. We were
yeah,
like, we can have sex with other people, but do not have
yeah,
feelings for them. And
yeah.
I had all these rules to try to protect us from having feelings, like no dating the same person twice in a week, no dating somebody like that you have outer.
See, that's like impossible for me, Molly. I fall in love. Carla knows this. I'll fall in love with a tree outside. Like I'll walk out the door and someone will wave at me, and I'm like, "We're soulmates." So
Yeah.
like, I would never be good at that.
Neither was
But
I. Well, I was, yeah. I mean, it was a long road, but now, yeah, I do. I feel like time is still a finite resource, though. So I have to also be mindful of like, I can't fall in love with
yeah,
everybody.
yeah,
And but I have another partner I love who lives in Ireland, and I might not, it's not even really sexual anymore. It's
yeah.
just like, but we'll send each other. There's nothing better than a voice message in an Irish accent just waiting in my inbox when I wake up in the morning. Like, and I was like, how's my favorite American? You know what I
I
mean? It's like, oh,
love
I
those.
love it. It feels great. And I have seen no reason to like shut that down. It's amazing. So it can be kind of endless and infinite if you're not also having expectations of how much time you're going to spend.
Yeah.
Um, but these connections can last forever. And that's the way it is with my parents now, too. They're still close friends with people in their 80s that they were once intimate with. And I
Yep.
think that's really lovely.
Yeah.
Wow. I want to jump into the next question. So, obviously, this opens up a whole new side of yourself and of your husband and your partners. I'm curious to know, like, what positive and or negative things have you learned about yourself since going on this journey?
Yeah, great question. I mean, one of the biggest glaring things that I have realized about myself and have been working on is my need for validation from other
Mhm.
people,
Mm.
and how much I was turning to men in particular to validate me.
Yes.
Um, and
Preach the
so
good word.
yeah. And so now I'm 51, but it's like, back, I still remember like turning 40 and being like, well, I guess this is it. I guess I'm at the end of the road and I'm never going to be seen. Pish posh, not true. It's like I learned that first of all, I have to give myself all the love that I'm seeking from
Yes.
others.
Yes.
Once I do that, I'm not nearly as I can also love people now without them ever loving me back. And like
Mm.
one of my partners that I'm currently with, he was having a hard time, and I was like, I already loved him. And I was like, I don't know if you're ready to love me, but just FYI, I
Yeah.
think I'm gonna love you forever. So like you do you, but I don't need you to like I've got plenty of love. I can give it. I can, if you're when you're ready to give it back, I can receive it. But if you can just receive it from me now, but it's like I feel like that. I'm all filled up and I've got it. So but learning that I couldn't outsource my happiness, I couldn't outsource my self-worth. That was like it was a negative for a while because, as you were saying, Remy, like I was seeking it from others in a way that was really problematic. But it's all part of the learning, and so I don't have any regrets about those times or those relationships because it was all like I had to hit some low moments of feeling empty and worthless to realize, wait a minute, nobody else can give this to me. I have to give
Yeah.
it to myself. So that's like the biggest one.
Yeah, I feel like these effort moments, that's why a lot of people kind of when they're feeling it, they stay away because of the fact that it will bring up so much shit and will
Mhm.
force you to look at yourself in the mirror and have to face all of that. That I think that's a big part as to why people are like, I don't even want to go there because
Yep.
Oh.
I don't even want to know and I don't want to deal with that. I'll stay in my safe
Yeah.
space
Yeah.
Yep.
and keep doing this because
Yeah.
it doesn't disrupt anything. But at the same time, when you do say F it and you do start learning all of these things, what opens up for you opportunity wise and perspective, I don't know, in my opinion, it's worth all of that messiness because you become a better person, not just for yourself, but for everybody else around you. Your kids see a different side of you that they need to see, actually, because if you keep yourself hidden and don't address these things within you, what does that teach your children?
I
You
love
know?
that. And I think talking about it from the perspective of also what is good for your kids, like before I opened the marriage, I would say I was kind of a walking migraine. You know what I mean? I think I had so much repressed,
Uh-huh.
so much, anger and angst, and I was really just trying to be everything to everyone. I didn't
Yeah.
even know who I was or what I wanted. That's not good for kids either. And so
No.
we think that being this selfless mother is
Yeah.
what we're supposed to do to be in service to our children, but when we aren't well within
Yes.
ourselves, we
Yes.
cannot parent well.
Yes.
No, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes. I'm
Yeah.
like, preach. Like I feel this deeply. I just my partner and I were just engaged. We just ended it. Carla and I were just sharing this on the last episode. And I had a conversation with my daughter about like really quickly, like if you ever don't want to move forward with someone asks you to marry them and you don't feel like it, you don't have to. Like, let's just start having these you don't just free yourself of that like that that expectation that we give the world, right? When we put things out there in the world, you get to change, you get to say no, you get to let people down. And like, these are things that I want to tell her now because we've all lived so much in the, like you said, the walking migraine of like holding it all in. Once I told my daughter and then I said it publicly, Molly, I was like,
So freeing.
I can breathe. I can breathe. I don't have to get married. We can work it out. My partner and I are beautiful friends who love each other. My daughter's watching us have a beautiful friendship and we can just all breathe. It
I've got
is,
goosebumps.
yeah.
That is so lovely.
It's
That makes
it's
me very
really,
happy
and
for
that's
all
like
of you.
hearing more stories like yours and like me putting my story out there. It's like, can we all just take a minute to just be honest, take a breath, stop judging everybody, and what a beautiful gift we give this next generation, right? Of kids.
Yeah. And I think heard someone, I don't know who it was. Somebody reframed um, people pleasing as self abandonment, and
Fuck
I
yes.
that was like such a like you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I really have taken that to heart, and like to model to your daughter also, like, even if you said you would marry them and then
Yeah.
you change your mind, you get
Yeah.
to change your
You get
mind.
to change.
You can pause it, you can decide, I want this
100%.
part, but not that part, and it's like, this is what it's all about. Whatever we've inherited as a legacy for women is not serving us. We can just, you don't have to look very far to see in the ways in which in a larger society women are not being served. And so it is up to us to
Yes.
create our boundaries and to stick to
100%.
them and to live the life we want to live. And we can just decide. We don't have
Yeah.
to wait for the world to change. We can just decide what we're going to
Yeah.
allow and what we're not.
Yeah, and I think those conversations at home, we make the narrative for our kids, right? Before they go into the world and they hear it from everyone under the sun and their views, we get to create that at home. And
Yep.
so I've really been working on having those conversations as she gets older in our home. I'm not a traditional mom. I don't live a very, I'm very public out there. I've done reality TV. I'm loud and I'm bi. I don't know if I'm gay. I don't know if I'm straight. I don't know. So
You
my
don't have to.
daughter's Right. And my daughter's on this beautiful journey with me. So the best thing that we can do, right, is to tap into like, let's just have honest conversations about what these things look like with our kids.
Yep.
My next question though is because it can be, yes, good and free and liberating and all of that, but there is also, the self-doubt. Am I doing the right thing? The negative talk. Am I fucking my kid up? Am I putting too much of myself out there? How do you manage to get through that as you're on this journey?
Yeah, well, there's a moment in the book, which you may recall, when I asked my therapist. It was after my oldest found out about the open marriage, and I was like, "Oh no!" And I asked my therapist, "Do you think I'm fucking up my
Yeah.
kids?" And he said, he was like completely earnest. He was like, "Molly, I think you're fucking them up the exact average amount." And I'm like, I love that so much because it's like, yes,
Yes.
there's no perfect.
No.
No such thing. Like even if we tried to be perfect, then we turn
Yeah.
into the walking migraine and we're back to being the worst. So it's like
Mhm.
there's only your own truth and there's only navigating it one step at a time. And so that freed me a lot from
Yes.
worrying about fucking them up. And then I was like, oh no, is the book going to fuck them up? Turns out it created some waves, especially with my youngest, but we've had some amazing conversations as a result. And we've been talking about how are we going to have an adult relationship moving forward? Because there's a set amount of time when your kids are children, and then most of your relationship, they're adults. And we all know
Yes.
this from our own relationships with our parents. How
Mhm.
much am I willing to share with my parents? How much do I want my kids to be able to share with me? And I want them to feel open and free with me. So we've talked about that. Even though he's only 19, we've had some really good conversations about like, how are we going, I know he wants some guardrails in place. It's like, I don't want to just like, I'm like, I'm not bringing people over to meet with you. I'm not, I was like, but also recognize that when you have friends whose parents micromanage them and you're like, oh, thank God you're not that way. It's like, there's some of both. So I no longer feel any fear that first of all, my
Mm.
kids are cooked now and they are both fabulous. They are launched. They are two of the most authentic people I know. And I compliment them on that all the time. They do not veer from who they truly are
Love
in
that.
the face of just about anything. And I've seen them face real challenges where that's been tested with friends, with relationships, with work, with school. And I love how they hold themselves in the world. So I
Mm.
learned from them. They're models for me.
But
So I
Mhm.
thanks to
feel
you,
Yeah.
thanks to you,
maybe,
yeah, and to your husband, they are that way because you have shown them your authentic self. So that's a really to parents, and I mean, it's a reminder to myself too, like your kids, they are going to watch what you do.
Yep. Not what you
So
say.
if and not really what you say. I mean, sure, you can instill things, but they're probably going to listen more to the people outside of you
yeah,
than you, but they're going
yeah,
to watch you.
yeah,
So live your life the way that you want to live it and admit to your mistakes and your faults. Like I wish like my mom would have been like, "Man, I fucked up." Like even
yeah,
to this
yeah.
day
My
I would
mom has a
appreciate.
hard time too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but my mom is never like she'll go to the grave saying like I did the best job, like even just that one I'm sorry or I messed up would have been like, oh.
Yeah,
And it's a relief for us moms too, like as parents to be able to be like, yeah, you know what? I didn't do anything great. I didn't do a lot of things great, but
yeah,
I tried to live my life so that you can see that you should be trying to live your life the way that you want to and not the way everybody else thinks that you should. Because that's
yeah,
the problem. Like we're all living our lives for other people.
yeah.
And that's when we all become those walking migraines.
Sure. And a genuine apology goes a long way. Like
It
Ugh.
really
I
does.
have messed up and I have genuinely apologized to my kids in a way that, that's something I try to do, like to
Yeah.
really think about it when they're upset with me and own it and genuinely apologize. Not give it lip service like, "Oh, I guess I should say I'm sorry." But
Yeah.
like I see how my actions affected you and I am sorry for that.
I think honoring that space between you and your kids is really important.
And they take that into every other relationship that they
Yep.
have, whether it be intimate or friendships or whatever, to be able to recognize when they've messed up and not feel weird about admitting it,
Right.
like,
It's offensive. Yeah.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So I know that you described yourself before as a walking migraine. Now, who is the new Molly since this effort
Uh,
moment?
I'm kind of obscenely happy, I have to
That's
say.
great.
I have my low moments, but they don't last very long, and I do think I just view it all differently. I view the lows as also opportunities. So even when there's challenges or when I feel stuck in some way, I try to use all those tools of introspection to just be like, "Huh, what is here for me to learn about myself?" My
Same.
bel my belief is that's why we're here in
Mhm.
bodies on this planet, and part of it a lot of it for me is in relationship, that our
Same.
relationships are there with our kids, with our parents, with our friends, with our lovers, with our spouses, are all there to help us see ourselves and to learn and to grow. So there's no downside to anything that happens when you view it all through a lens of learning and growth, when you don't have a real set expectation of what should be happening. So that's what I aspire to. It's still a work in progress, but I'm way better at it now than I ever have been. So I'm happier than I've ever been.
That's
I love
beautiful.
that so much. So much of my life has been I've been married 3 times and it's all out there. It's not a surprise, but I really have learned so much in these relationships in my life. I've learned so much about myself and my childhood and how to be the mother that I am through the relationships I've been in. I just keep growing, right? And learning new things about myself. And the one thing that you said that really hits is like I'm in the transition right now of my fiance and I being friends, still living together and transitioning back into friends. We were friends prior to our engagement.
Yeah.
And it has just been such a beautiful experience to share with her this last year together. And although it didn't work out in that way, it's been a really beautiful journey back into who we are. We've grown so much. So I love you saying that because sometimes people and moms hold so much pressure on themselves when relationships change or shift or people and they're not, living this idea. And it's like there is that happiness I get when you're just okay with like learning from what energy and what you get from these
Yeah.
different people in your life. And I don't think for me as well
Yeah.
that there's just one person. I really do think one of the most beautiful gifts to some of us, right? And I know for you it sounds like, and for me has been just the people that come in and out of my life, and that I'm not necessarily just needing one person, right? I get so many beautiful things from so many different friendships, lovers, sex, like my child, her friend, like just from
Yeah.
people. And when you allow that, there is that just,
Yeah.
and you're
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah. And I was going to say too, I think we make the mistake of thinking that a relationship that ends is a failed relationship.
Thank you.
I do not believe that.
I do not either. Thank you.
Yeah, and so people like I am still with my husband because we are still learning and growing in
Yes.
our relationship. If that weren't the case, if we needed to separate in order to learn and grow, then that would be the right choice. But we
Mhm.
are learning and growing together, and partly we learn and grow together because we allow each other to learn and grow with others as well. But then my husband is always the person now that I can come back to and being like, here's this
Yes.
thing that's going on with this person or that person, and he's like one of my best advisors for all of it. And so he's an important member of Team Molly in my field. Like he's got his own life too, but he's also a
Yeah.
really important member of my team, my growth team. I think of
Yes.
it as, and people can come and go in those roles, and it doesn't always have to be a lover. It can be, as you said, friends, and all of the people that we encounter in our lives are all just walking opportunities for us.
Yeah. Like, how do we learn about ourselves if we aren't in relation with other people? Like,
100%.
and I will admit, prior to having our effort moment and starting this podcast, I was very much like, I'm good by myself. I don't need anybody, like that sort of
Yeah.
thing, kept myself shut off. But the moment I started opening up, I started to learn so much about me in relation to those people. So it's
Hmm.
like, we have to be in community if we want to continue to grow, if we want to be like, I'm striving to be a better person every day. The only way I'm going to be able to do that is if I have people around me that I'm able to like learn from and gain things from, and get like, and have them be honest with me and be like, Carly, you're being a little bit, oh, okay, great, I didn't know that. So it is so important to have that, to understand yourself.
I think that the biggest thing though is a little bit of what you said, Molly, too, and to Carla, is being able to breathe and actually let yourself be you to those people is the hardest part. The reason we don't let all those people in and we close off and we want to be alone is because we're not okay with who we are yet.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's true.
And we might need, yes, and we might need to restore ourselves at
Yeah.
Yeah.
certain points too. And to like, I've always considered myself a big extrovert, but actually another thing with the book, I've been getting more comfortable saying, "Eff it, that's a no." You
Yes.
know what I mean? I can't say yes to everybody. I
Yes.
can't. I can't respond to everybody who DMs me on Instagram. I can't say yes to every
No.
request for my time, and so I've had to be more discerning, and I can still be like kind about it. And but I think taking that relationship with your own self,
Yes.
another thing I've really discovered lately is like I have a mother, yes, and I love her, but I also need to be my own mother.
Yeah.
And I have my back
Yeah.
in a way
Mm-hmm.
that feels really good, where I can
Mm-hmm.
check in with myself. I don't really ask anybody for advice anymore. I used to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But now I'm like, I know what's best for me. Sometimes talking with other people, or like, processing it is very
Yeah.
helpful, but I don't ever be like, what should I do? I might say, like, here's this thing I'm working on, and I might talk about it with a friend, but then ultimately I know I got to go back within myself to get the final verdict. I don't go to anybody else to find out what I need.
I
Wow.
just hit a season in my life of, and I just said this, I think a week ago. I feel like I came out of some huge therapy session. I talked about like huge, and I'm like, you know what? I can trust myself on my own decisions in my life for the first time in my life. I'm 42 years old, and this may be the very first time that I feel like, you know what, don't you can take a break on therapy for a minute. You've been in for 2 years. You can take a break on, you know what is best for you. Please start trusting yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's huge.
It's
It's huge. That's why
huge.
I loved my 40s. My
Yeah.
50s are even better so
Heck
far.
yes.
I'm
That's
like,
exciting to hear.
so great. And yeah, all the myths about, like, for me, I'm just going to put it out there because people wonder. I
Yeah.
am having the best sex of my life. I
In your
am.
50s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So like
Well,
I thought it was like a race against time, but now I'm like, oh man, this is good. Why was I ever worried about 50? It's freaking amazing.
Love it.
but it's probably because you're in such a good place with yourself that you can let yourself go. I feel like, when you've got all this shit like walking migraine type of thing, like you're living your
Yeah,
life for other people, how can you let yourself go in these experiences with people sexually and all of that? So that
that's a
makes
great point.
sense.
That's a
Yeah.
great point. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
did and I did put in the hours of figuring myself out,
Right.
and you
To enjoy this.
dig
Yeah.
into some ugly hard things to get out of the migraine zone.
Yeah.
I'm just going off my anti-anxiety meds now too,
Yeah.
which is
Oh.
interesting. I've been on them for 10 years, and I'm been weaning for the last several months, and I feel like for the first time in my life I've had the bandwidth to look at my anxiety and to
Yeah.
see what's actually underneath it, where it's coming from, and to deal with it. So just having that freedom too, it's like,
Yeah.
these are all the things that, and I'm not saying everybody should just like, I couldn't have gone off it when my kids were little because I didn't
Yeah.
have the bandwidth to like lie in bed and cry sometimes. You know what I mean? Now,
Yes.
it's hard. It's hard when you have kids to really like carve out that time for yourself, but just like my advice for people, if anybody's interested, is just to carve out as much time for yourself as you can, even when you're in the depths of this momminess. um, I found even like picking up my kids from school, I started a thing when they were probably like 9 and 6 when I started doing this, when I was like, I need 10 minutes when
Yeah.
we walk in the door. You guys need to entertain yourself
For
for
10.
10 minutes while I go like whatever I had to do, scream into a pillow, whatever it was. Cause it was like I was teaching all day at the time too. And so I was like with adolescents all day and then picking up my kids and then coming home. And, you have to carve out. But I was like, once I took those 10 minutes, it felt like such a small thing. It
Mm.
changed my whole feeling about like the next segment of the evening, which was like round four or whatever it was at that point. But it was like,
Yeah.
you got to give yourself permission for those little breathers wherever you can.
I this morning, I'm going to get into the last question, but you said that this morning I was like running late straight into this is because I've been going all week nonstop. My daughter's been out of summer camp this week for 4th of July. So I had work, her weddings. I've got her the whole weekend. We got the whole weekend planned, right, for 4th of July weekend. A friend said, "Do you want to come on a motorcycle ride in the morning?" Right. And like get coffee. I looked at my partner and said, I'm leaving at 8 a.m. I'm going for 2 hours to ride on a bike and meditate. I need a minute to myself before I come back, do the
Hmm.
podcast, go into mom mode, get through the weekend, and then travel on Monday for work. And I called her on the way home and said, I needed that. I
Yeah.
don't care. I needed that minute to
That's it.
reset. And now I feel good. Like I could come home, do this, and then I'm okay to kick into mom gear. But moms need to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just carving out that time is huge.
Yeah, this is a good reminder to hear for myself because we were just talking about this on the last episode where like there's the logical side of me that says, "Okay, Carly, you need to step back and take a minute." But then there's the other part of me, the old wiring that's like, "No, no, no, you can push through. You can get through this. Just push through
Yeah.
it." And it never works for me, never works. But it's like how for me, I struggle with paying attention to that other
Sure.
voice that's like, Carla, take a fucking break. So I'm
Well,
still very much in that learning zone, but I'm so glad to hear you say that because it just reemphasizes that I need to listen to that voice.
well, it's like that lean in bullshit that makes me so angry. Lean in.
Yeah, I
Lean
know.
into what? To like,
I
Yeah.
know. It doesn't make me a better person. It doesn't make me a better mom when I do that.
oh,
Like I'm more agitated, more short with
no.
her. And it's just
Lean
like,
in needs to die
Yes.
yeah,
as a thing.
yeah,
No, lean away, lean
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 back.
away.
away. Yeah. Like lean
Yeah.
into yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, we are so grateful for you. Carla, you're going to have to read this book. Everybody listening, please read this book. If you are in a relationship, not in a relationship, open, wherever your walk of life is, it's fascinating to hear. It's such a, I think, a journey within learning about yourself. That's what I felt like, even if I didn't come out of reading this book and wanting to move forward in open relationships because I don't know that that is my direction. It really opened up conversations in my relationship that allowed me to open up different spaces in me. So,
I'm so glad to hear that. And my audience in mind is not necessarily even people who are interested in open. I like to say
right.
I had an open marriage so that you don't have to.
Yeah.
Like just like take
Yeah.
what I
Mm.
learned and metabolize it in your own way. It's definitely not a how-to manual. It's nothing.
No.
I also did the audiobook, so I always like to say that to people because like so, especially for moms who don't have time, it's like,
I'm listening to audio.
yeah, if you're like going for a walk or
Yeah.
whatever, like when you're pushing the stroller, like
Yep.
you can, if you're driving people to, maybe not in the car with kids who are like, I don't know, could be an interesting conversation starter. One of my friends let her 13-year-old son read it, and I thought that was quite whoa.
Wow.
She was like, I would rather have him learn about sex from you than from
Yeah.
porn. And I was like, all
Right.
There you
right,
go.
that's fair,
There you
but
go.
not advocating
I'm
that.
listening to the audio because I'm always in the car for work. So it's been really easy for me to just like listen. And then my partner was listening to it as well. I don't think we came out of it being like, oh, this open relationship is going to be great for us. But like you said, we get to kind of live through it with you. And so that was like so huge. My question before we tell everybody where they can listen and buy and support and connect with you, what is your message of empowerment to your children, anyone listening to your story?
Live your freest self. Find your freest self and live it.
Yes.
And
Yes,
that
yes, yes.
can take a whole lifetime and it can change, but find where that free self is hiding and let her out.
Fuck
Yeah.
yes. Yes. Thank you.
The more people do that, yeah, I was just gonna say the more people do that, there would be a shift in the world. People would
Yes.
be so much nicer and so much more respectful to each other, and we would be in more harmony than we are now. Because I
Yeah.
think all the shit that's happening in the world is because people are just like in really bad places with themselves and
Yeah.
are not able to live in harmony with others. So
And when you don't look at your own like shadow side, you just
yeah,
throw it at other people and project it
Yep.
onto everyone
right,
else.
right, right,
So
Yep.
you
right.
gotta feel all of it, all the good, all the bad. It's not good or
Yeah,
bad. It's just part of it. It's just
yeah,
juice.
yeah, yeah.
100%. Molly, where can everybody find you, connect with you, give everybody the information?
Sure. My website is mollyrodinwinter.com. You can follow me on Instagram, Molly R. Winter. But you can get my book wherever books are sold, ebook, audiobook, every place you find books is where you can find more.
Awesome. Thank
Awesome.
you so much. I'm going to listen to the audio as well. So I'm
Great.
really excited. Yeah, really excited.
I'm so glad. Thank you guys so much. This was a great conversation.
Oh, we're
Yes,
so happy.
thank
This is
you.
this is the end where we say just F it. So Molly, you can kick it off and say it, and then Carla, and then I'll say it.
Just F it.
Just F it.
Just F it.